This is me, Steve Sims here. You are in the Speakeasy private Facebook group because you're special. And I have someone with me today on First Tuesday who is amazingly special to me. I'm going to be introducing you in a couple of seconds to the great, the wonderful Ari Meisel. But I want you to know straight off the bat, this is one of my coaches. You know, I've often said that you don't need the doctor when things are going well. You need it when things are fucked up. And we're in a world where things are a little bit messy at the moment. Through my life, as it's got more cluttered, I've reached out, and Ari's been one of my coaches. I'm very proud of had him coach me. He will coach me again in the future, as he always does. I'm going to hand it over to him, but he's going to run through how to automate scale. I'd like you, if you don't mind, before I hand that over to you, Ari, can you give us a little bit of an idea of your background, from where you came from to how you are the automation king?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for that nice intro, Steve. And while I'm doing that, I'll give you my intro, but while I'm doing that, if you guys take a second and you can put in the comments what one of the biggest challenges you're facing in the business is right now, that would be really helpful for me to sort of shape the conversation as it goes. So basically, Steve was a bricklayer. I was too, actually, when I was after I got out of college, and I was working in construction. And basically, after a couple of years of living a really unhealthy life, I got sick and was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which is a chronic condition, is considered to be incurable and very debilitating. Long story short, I was able to overcome the illness, but basically what happened is I went from working 18-hour days to working 1-hour days, if I was lucky. And that extreme sort of restriction on my time is really what formed the basis for everything that I've taught and done since then. So I started a productivity system, which I called Less Doing, as in less doing, more living, and wrote a few books on that. And mostly was focused on personal productivity. And then I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago, I sort of shifted to doing more and more business-minded stuff. And the current program that I run is called, and the latest book also is called The Replaceable Founder. So the idea is that we want to make everybody in the business as replaceable, not replaced, but as replaceable as possible by creating systems and processes that really empower teams and allow you to be more effective. So that's where I am now.
Ari's done very well with us. And again, I'm just going to frame it and then I'm out. I'm going to then bring Ari in to have the sole screen. I'm going to be checking all the messages and questions and writing these down. We're going to be running for about 25 minutes to 30 minutes, and then we're going to go into a Q&A. So I'm going to bring those questions up at the end. But Ari's got a great mind of actually getting into a scenario and asking, why is that done that way? How can we automate it so you can be focusing on your 5%, the thing that makes you special? So without further ado, may I hand it over to you, Ari, to look after our Speakeasy crew?
Great. Thanks.
Right, then it's all you.
Okay. Okay. So there's 3 main things that I want to cover in the sort of short time that we have today. The way that my sort of system breaks down is I really focus on 3 main areas of anybody's business, and that is communication, project management, and processes. Now, those all get broken down into sort of subtopics for each one of them. But I want to sort of cover one concept from each of those areas today. So I'm going to talk about asynchronous communication, project management done right, which addresses the question that somebody put in there about organizing things. And then I want to talk about some automation stuff. And one of the things that I want to share with you is a way that you can get more and more content out in a really automated, easy way, which I think is something really, really important for everybody to be doing right now, is getting content out. So with that, the first one is a little bit conceptual, and I need to just explain sort of the reasoning behind it, and then we can get into some of the cool tech. I've always been into technology, and technology is a wonderful thing, except that it will merely amplify habits. So the problems with technology is that if you have bad habits, it's going to make them a lot worse. And if you have good habits, it will make them a lot better. It's sort of that amplifying effect. So the solution is never technology. As much as I love tech, and there's all sorts of times where people would just like to know, like, what's the one tool that's going to completely change my life? And it just doesn't work that way. It's a false expectation. And particularly right now, where people are scrambling and trying to figure out how to do things differently, the tools are going to help. But if you have people suddenly working from home and using Zoom for the first time, for example, that's the tool, that's the solution, right? Oh, great, we can all work from home now and then have Zoom calls, but that doesn't take into account all the security issues that Zoom has had, the fact that now you have kids running around in the background, the technical aspects of getting on the Zoom calls, all that kind of stuff. So if you don't have that in your work culture already, it's not going to be a fix to have a tool. So I just need to say that it's sort of like a disclaimer. So the first thing, as I said, is asynchronous communication. And to me, this is the #1 tool in the arsenal for me in this time and for all of our clients as well. So in terms of asynchronous communication, what I mean by that is the opposite of synchronous communication. So any of you that are watching this live right now, this is synchronous communication, right? I'm talking and you can respond with your comments. We can go back and forth. A phone call is synchronous. A Zoom call would be synchronous. Most other things that we use for communication are meant to be asynchronous. And a lot of times we don't use them that way. So the concept with asynchronous basically is that I can send a message, I can put something out there whenever I want, whenever is most convenient for me, or ideally whenever is most effective for me. The person on the other end can receive it when and where they want to, and then they can respond when and where they want to, and the cycle goes on and on. So what you're essentially doing by allowing people to communicate asynchronously is allowing them to communicate when they're at their best, which I shouldn't have to convince you why that's a good thing. But we can really sort of stretch the limits of asynchronous communication. So things like Slack, I'm sure many people are familiar with Slack, things like WhatsApp. My personal favorite for communicating is a tool called Voxer, which I'll talk a little bit more about. But the idea that we're suddenly going to be remote and then have the 9 a.m. huddle on Tuesdays with everybody there is unreasonable in a remote setting. It's also unreasonable in a physical setting. So this is actually something that we work on with companies that are not remote at all, is to do this more and more asynchronous communication, because what ends up happening when you're not communicating asynchronously is you end up interrupting a lot of people. And what we know from a lot of research is that one interruption in a day can pretty much ruin a person's entire day in terms of productivity. It just is the way it is. There's some really specific sort of numbers and statistics around it, but it's not good. And whoever ever thought that you could get 2 people, much less an entire team, like 10 or 12 or 20 people on the same schedule, that, you know, Monday at 9 a.m. they're going to have their meeting and everyone's going to be on it, is just crazy. So one of the things that we do is